Thank you. And thank you to Gavin for organising this fantastic conference. My only complaint is, being the last speaker, I can see all of you are thinking about what you're going to do tonight. And the other problem is that just about everything I'm going to say has already been said. But on the other hand, this is really good revision. It is good to go over things again. So that's what we're going to do. I wouldn't mind my slides being up on the... Here we go. Okay. So what I need to say, first of all, is refer to any conflicts of interest. One of the issues in tobacco harm reduction is that we are winning the evidence debate, but we're being discredited in any possible way we can. If there's any suggestion of a conflict of interest, even if it's been openly discussed and declared, it often gets brought up again to undermine our credibility. And I've certainly had no personal payments from tobacco or e-cigarette companies, unfortunately. No one's offered. But the Australian Tobacco Harm Reduction Association has copped a lot of flack for secret funding, which wasn't secret, but which certain people have fed to the media. And I know this conference has been at the end of that sort of attack, all about discrediting the opposition, which dares to speak out against the status quo. We took, as a charity to set it up, we took money initially from the vape industry. It was declared publicly, but it was apparently secret, and it was therefore uncovered. So I just wanted to make the point that we used to be leaders in tobacco control in Australia. We had a great reputation as being innovative, introducing strategies that would be followed by other countries around the world. But in Australia, over the last 6 years, we've actually fallen behind. And as you can see from this graph, although it's not very clear, but from 2013, the grey lines are our national tobacco studies. And basically, the fall over that last 6 years has not been significant. So we're no longer dropping. But what the graph shows is that in other countries, which we compare ourselves to, like the UK, the rate of decline in adult cigarette smoking is dropping much faster than us. And in the US, in spite of all the terrible problems they're apparently having over there, they're also falling a lot faster than us. And the big difference between our countries, we think, is vaping. It's certainly playing a major role. And although, I don't know if you heard Greg Hunt's speech at the press club a couple of weeks ago. Greg Hunt came out and announced a new policy. He was going to get the daily smoking rate down below 10% by 2025. Lots of rhetoric and great excitement. What he didn't mention was that in 2012, when the National Tobacco Strategy was developed, the goal for the National Tobacco Strategy was to get daily smoking down to 10% by last year. He forgot about that, and he announced this aspirational goal to get it down. And I think the point is that we've run out of ideas in Australia. His policy announced at that presentation was $40 million over 4 years for mass media campaigns. That's about 1,000th of what we get from the tobacco tax. So just to give you an idea, we're not going to change this in a hurry with the no plan that we currently have. And that's why we're so passionate about advocating for a plan that will work. Because still 19,000 people die every year killed by tobacco in Australia. Unfortunately, it's increasingly in the disadvantaged population who already have enough problems, and it's not getting better. So this is still our biggest preventable health problem in Australia, which is apparently being ignored. It's not a very sexy topic. Perhaps it doesn't get that many votes, doesn't get the headlines, but it's a huge issue. The three pillars of our tobacco policy in Australia, and this is all within official documents, to prevent uptake, and we're doing that very well. So the rate of kids smoking is very low. Helping smokers quit, we really don't do very well, and that's why our smoking rates are staying the same. Adults are just addicted and are not stopping. Some are, but quit rates are very low, even with the best treatments. The third pillar of our treatment is harm reduction, so reducing harm to bystanders. And we're good at that. We've had lots of strict bans and we're reducing exposure to tobacco smoke. But what we're not good at is reducing harm in continuing smokers. And that's what this conference is all about, harm reduction for people who smoke, who can't quit. How can we reduce the harm to them? And, everyone's talked about harm reduction. It's all about reducing the harm. Who cares if they continue nicotine? As someone said, I can't remember who it was, but our job in public health ends when people stop smoking. If they're still using nicotine, that's nothing to do with us. Our job is to reduce the harm. Because, as we all know, people smoke for the nicotine but die from the smoke. Sam? Yes, so Sam mentioned the national alcohol strategy, which I think is a great idea. The problem is that we have strategies also, but we don't necessarily follow them. I think it's great to have a strategy. And we know that the national tobacco strategy emphasises tobacco harm reduction. We totally ignore that. So does the national drug strategy. Again, there's no tobacco harm reduction following on from that. We're signatories to the World Health Organization Treaty, the Framework Convention of Tobacco Control, which mandates Australia to introduce tobacco harm reduction. It's written there, it's a legal obligation. We don't do that. So having it written down is all very nice, but our government sees this as a theoretical aspect of addressing the drug problem in the case of smoking, not as a practical solution. And we need to keep reminding them about that. I won't go into the detail, but there are 3 types of tobacco harm reduction. There's snus, which has had huge success in Scandinavia and Iceland. Little tea bags of tobacco that go under the lip. There's vaping, which I'm going to be mainly talking about, and there's heat not burn, which is made by the evil big tobacco industry, therefore we have to block it, but which is at least 90% safer, we think, than smoking. So these are the different options, all of which are effectively illegal in Australia. You can get snus, but you pay a fortune for it. Don't you, Attila?
Yes.
Yeah, so you can bring it in, but you pay about $1,100 a kilogram. So, effectively they're all banned. Heat not burn is also banned. As you would know, the current laws on nicotine in Australia is, yes, you can legally buy tobacco products. You can go to your corner store, buy your cigarettes. But if you buy a nicotine product in a liquid to prevent your smoking, that is banned. The government specifically said, okay, it's okay to buy tobacco, which kills 19,000 people, but if you want to buy liquid nicotine to help you quit, you can go to jail. So nicotine's a poison, unless it's in a cigarette. You can import it legally if you have a prescription. But because all our health organisations, we don't know enough about vaping, say that, then the doctors won't give you a script. It's regulated as tobacco, ridiculously, under state law. And the penalties are absurd. You can go to jail for 2 years in 3 of the states and territories for possessing nicotine liquid, which you might be using to save your own life. You can be fined up to $45,000 for possessing nicotine liquid. So smokers have a choice of either running a 2 in 3 chance of dying from smoking or breaking the law, potentially going to jail. Now, people aren't, but it's hanging over their heads, and a lot of people worry about it, and a lot of people won't vape because of that fear. So this is a really immoral situation, I think. And because of that, we have extremely low vaping rates in Australia. These are typical Western countries that we compare ourselves with. And you can see Australia down the one end of the scale, 1.2% of Australians, up to now. In the US, I think it's now, latest ASH survey was about 7%. And you can see, even in New Zealand, it's 3.8%, and the same in the US, and it just goes up from there. So these draconian laws are forcing smokers to stay on combustible cigarettes and preventing them from going to the alternative. And Australia is the only Western democracy to ban the sale and use of nicotine for vaping. So it's a de facto ban. You can get a script, but in reality that doesn't happen. So we apparently know better than all the other countries, and they're going to be proven to be wrong down the track, and we'll be right, and apparently we know better. But in fact, we do have the evidence. Now, the evidence is never perfect, but we have the evidence that these products are effective. So vaping is recommended for people who are otherwise going to smoke, who cannot stop. So they've got a 2 in 3 chance of dying. This is an alternative they're not allowed to use. It's at least twice as effective as the best available treatment we have, but they're not allowed to use it. It's not risk-free, nothing is risk-free, but it's at least 95% safer than smoking, but they can't use it. There is no credible evidence of a youth epidemic or a youth gateway. And we were discussing earlier, Robert West and Jamie Brown from the UK, two highly respected researchers, analysed the American data and said there is no youth epidemic even in the US where this source arose. It's all a beat up. It's all a question of how you define vaping. They talk about 30-day vaping. But regular use by kids who have never smoked is rare, even in the US. And in the US, smoking rates are falling like a stone in youth. 25% smoking rates dropped in the US last year. This is a myth. And most importantly, it's the most popular quitting aid in the world. So where it's available, it is the most popular quitting aid. So not only is it more effective, but it reaches more people. But it's banned in Australia. David Sweeney covered this area very, very well, but people make a moral judgment about, in this case, vaping, based on what they feel, and then they justify it with rationalisation. So people shouldn't vape because, look, it's a drug addiction, I don't believe people should be on drugs. Or people shouldn't vape because it's a new technology, we just don't know. I'm afraid this could become a problem like something else that didn't work once before. Or people should just stop altogether. We believe they should stop. This will be like we've admitted we've failed. We can't have this. What will we say? Oh, we're going to say, look, there isn't enough evidence, or we're going to explain this by it's big tobacco behind this, and therefore we have to block it. It doesn't really work. In fact, it undermines quitting. And credible scientists make these scientists make these claims. Every one of those rationalisations, I'd be very happy to spend a couple of hours telling you why they're wrong, although you mostly probably know them. So these are Australia's health and medical organisations. You know them all well. The front three are the peak health body of Australia, National Health and Medical Research Centre. There's our national regulator, that's the sheep on the right, the TGA. Then there's the health department. And every federal and state health department is opposed to vaping. The other members of this flock are the AMA, the Royal Australian College of Physicians, the Thoracic Society, and the Public Health Association of Australia. All our leading medical and health organisations. There's also the Lung Foundation, the Cancer Council, and the Heart Foundation. The only black sheep in the crowd is the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Psychiatrists. Thank God for them. Somebody is willing to step out of the pack. This is groupthink. This is the herd effect, where it's just safer to follow the group than to actually critically analyse the evidence and stick your neck out and step out of line. And that's what we're dealing with here. It's just safer to follow the pack. He said it, and she said it, so it must be right, and that's just calmer that way. We don't get into any trouble, and we won't make the wrong mistake. And the final message I'd like to leave to Greta Thunberg, whom I wish was on our organisation. She's got an open membership to the board of ATHRA. But Greta said, "How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual?" And that's what Greg Hunt's trying to do. She said, "We're in the beginning of a mass extinction. People are suffering, people are dying." Alex said, 1 billion people will die this year from cigarettes. She said it's time to face the reality, the facts, the evidence. We have the evidence. It's not perfect, but it's more than enough. We never have the full evidence when we introduce a new product. And finally, she said, change is coming whether you like it or not. And I believe that. I think The evidence, how's that for timing? The evidence will win out in the end, but we have a fight on our hands. Thank you.